Welcome to my next in a series of videos on inexpensive digital cameras. Now lately, the price of compact point-and-shoot digital cameras has risen dramatically. Not too long ago, you could purchase compact point-and-shoot digitals on eBay, other auction sites, thrift stores, secondhand stores for around $30. But Canon PowerShot Digital L's, Fujifilm FinePix S's, Nikon Coolpix cameras that were all relatively inexpensive have now spiked in price. I recently saw a Canon PowerShot Digital Elf on eBay go for close to $200. Now this is a camera that was 7 years old and just a few years ago would have gotten less than half that. But the price has spiked on these, and this market is very hot. I'm not sure why, and I'm sure it will change over time, but for now, pricing on these compact point and shoots is high. On the other hand, larger digital cameras, the so-called bridge cameras that fall in between these compact point and shoots and DSLRs or interchangeable lens mirrorless cameras, has remained relatively low. So now's a good time to consider one of these bridge cameras. And there's a lot of good reasons that you may want to choose these over a compact point and shoot digital. They tend to offer more features than the compact digitals. Almost all of them have much longer zooms, some all the way up to 50x optical zooms, so they can be great for wildlife shots, shooting pictures of birds, animals, or just long range shots in general. Many of them have image stabilization and Wi-Fi capabilities, so they can provide sharper imaging and also easy to upload your pictures to websites and to your computer. And they can be a nice learning step in your photographic journey. As the name implies, they're bridge cameras. They fall in the gap between just straight point and shoot cameras and more advanced cameras. Now today, what we're going to look at is one of these bridge cameras, the Fujifilm FinePix S8600. Now this was a camera that was introduced by Fujifilm back in 2014. So now it's about 10 years old, and you can buy these on eBay or auction sites. You can find them in thrift stores for around $50. This one that I got works perfectly. I found it in a thrift store for $30. And there are a lot of good reasons to consider this camera, this Fujifilm FinePix S8600. As I said, it's relatively inexpensive. It's easy to use. It's very intuitive with dials that lets you set it. You can set it to a completely automatic setting if you just want to use it as a point and shoot. It has a 36x optical zoom. Now this translates to about a 900 millimeter zoom, and if you were using a 35 millimeter camera. So that's a pretty long zoom and great for shooting pictures of birds and wildlife. It's got 16 megapixels, so it's good for sharp photos. It's a relatively lightweight, well-built camera. And it's got lots of features, including face detection, panoramic shooting, and video. A couple of the cons, or the not so great features about this camera, it's getting a little dated. It doesn't have high definition video. It doesn't have any manual focus, so if you want to explore manual photography, it's a little more difficult to do that with this camera. There is no Wi-Fi on this camera, so you'll have to use the memory card to upload onto your computer or onto websites. It's also not a weather sealed camera. Many of the other bridge cameras are weather sealed, so you can use them in inclement weather. This you have to be a little more careful with. it's got a smaller sensor, as most bridge cameras do, than DSLRs. So when you're considering this, you got to remember that the sensor size is smaller in these than it is in the more expensive DSLRs and full-frame mirrorless cameras. And that's going to mean that at long-range photos are not going to be quite as sharp. You're going to get what they call softer and not as sharp when you're taking those long distance photos. It operates on 3 AA batteries, and this is both a pro and a con of this camera. AA batteries, the pro side is they're readily available, they're inexpensive. The downside is that if you're buying one of these used, many times people would just leave the batteries in the camera, and AA batteries don't tend to be as well sealed as device-specific batteries, and they tend to leak. So when you're purchasing one of these in the used market, always check to see that there's no corrosion in the battery compartment. I would avoid it if you look in there and it looks like batteries have leaked in there. So what we're going to do in this video is take a look at this camera, take a look at some of the features, and then let you decide whether this would be a good camera for you to add to your collection or to use as a stepping stone from a digital point and shoot on your photographic journey to full-blown DSLRs or full-frame mirrorless cameras. So stay tuned. We're looking at the Fujifilm FinePix S8600. The Fujifilm FinePix S8600 is a good-looking camera. Now, it doesn't have an optical viewfinder, but it does have a good 3-inch LCD screen. The lens has a 36x optical zoom, and this is the equivalent of a 25 to 900 millimeter lens, so you can go from wide angle to super telephoto with this camera. The optical stabilization helps you get sharper photos at the longer range. Now, if you set the camera on auto, you can use it just like a point and shoot camera, and it does well. But the camera gives you the option of employing lots of features, including filter effects, where you can selectively blur parts of the photo or change the color rendition using the filter effects, and there's a whole group of filter effects available for your use. Of course, the 36x optical zoom is great for taking wildlife photos. The camera has an easy-to-use panoramic feature, which lets you move the camera across the scene and create a panorama. You can do this very easily. Just set the panorama feature, press the shutter, and move the camera across the scene. The camera does the rest. Video is not high definition, but it's really not too bad for standard definition. If you're going to use this camera strictly for a video camera, it's probably not the best choice. But for occasional videos, it's not too bad. We've had the opportunity to look at the FinePix S8600, and I think it's a good camera, an easy camera to use. It has some limitations and it's starting to get a little dated, but yet it is reasonably priced and easy to use. Now, Fujifilm made a couple of iterations of this camera. They made the 8600, the 8630, and the 8650, but for all practical purposes, they're very much the same. Now, there are other bridge cameras that are available. Nikon, Canon, both made very good bridge cameras, and we'll explore some of those in later videos. But for now, I'm going to say for the price, this is a really good camera as long as you realize the limitations. So look for them in thrift stores, eBay, secondhand stores, and as I said, you can get them for around $50, and I think that's a good buy. Thanks for watching.